to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste.
I'm a king of rock, there is none higher. Sucker MCs should call me sire. To birth my kingdom, you must choose fire. I won't stop rocking till I retire.
Now we rock the party and come correct. All special on time and rhyme connect. Got the right to vote and to elect. And other rappers can't stand us, but give us respect. I wanna rock.
Into this house we're born, into this world we're thrown, like a dog without a bone, an actor out on loan, riders on the storm.
And the music was good and the music was loud.
Oh Lord,
what's up, cyberspace cadets? That's right. Ring that bell. Subscribe if you can. It's Irate Prostate. It's Monday. And you know what that means. It's time for...
Extra credit.
Extra credit. That's right. Extra credit with Miss Becca FERHLE. Hey, Miss Becca FERHLE. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. All right. So we're getting into the last inning before this here election thing's going on. So I'm sure people are getting maxed out on the politics stuff, but this shit's important because to them this is their end game. Just saying. If you are not clued in, next week we'll definitely get into the direct effect that China is having on the United States itself. So. And Russia back in the Soviet days. So, but before that, we're going to get into the proliferation of the exportation of communism throughout Africa and really the third world primarily. And then towards the end, I'll also talk about Czechoslovakia and Hungary, what happened there too with the Ruskies.
Fun.
You know, it's like Tiananmen Square. You know, you stand up against communist power, they will fucking shoot your ass. So,
yes.
Oh, I cussed. I'm trying not to cuss, people, because I'm trying to stay monetized, so I can actually make money off of these things. But I'm getting nothing but yellow dollar signs, people, and I don't know what that means. It implies that. Only certain advertisers. I don't get it.
You're in limited state. I think is what that is. Yeah.
Limited state. What does that mean?
You only get certain advertisers.
I don't feel limited. You know what I'm saying?
To let you know, when I clicked on the stream, I did get 2 ads, and I did sit through them.
Hey, Dark Star 6909. Yeah. Yes. Just as the cat pops up through the huge super chat, $5. Thank you. Kicking a few in for the show. Thank you so much. $2 from Malin Miller.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm just glad NASA beat the Soviets to the moon. Indeed, me too, man. And they found water on the moon, on the light side of the moon. They just announced that today.
I saw that.
Yeah, and so that's one of the Space Force things is that we're going to have a manned presence on the moon by the end, I think, of 2025 or 2030. That's the game plan. You know, the Mars thing is a bit more pie in the sky to me, but putting a presence on the lunar surface would be very important for us, I think, strategically. But anyway, you know, we got this stuff about communism. We're on part 5 of it, actually, part 5, part B of 5. So let's, I guess we'll go ahead and roll that. Speaking of space, we got the beautiful sun out there. Are you on the viewer there, Miss Becca?
I am.
Well, then let's roll this thing, and then we'll stop and talk when we need to, or when we want to.
Sweet.
All right, fam, buckle up. This is pretty interesting. All right.
Two, exporting revolution to Africa and Latin America. During the Cultural Revolution, the CCP often quoted a slogan by Karl Marx, quote, "The proletariat can liberate itself only by liberating all of humanity." The CCP preaches world revolution. In the 1960s, the former Soviet Union was going through a period of contraction and was forced to promote the cutback of external revolution. The goal became to peacefully coexist with Western capitalist countries and provide less support to the Third World revolutionary movements. The CCP called this policy revisionism. In the early 1960s, CCP ambassador to the Soviet Union, Wang Jiashang, made a similar proposal but was criticized by Mao as being too friendly to the imperialists, revisionists, and reactionaries, and not supportive enough to the world revolutionary movement. Therefore, in addition to exporting revolution to Asia, Mao also competed with the Soviet Union in Africa and Latin America. In August 1965, CCP Minister of National Defense Lin Biao claimed in his article, quote, "Long live the victory of the People's War," that a high tide in world revolution was imminent. According to Mao's theory of encircling the cities from rural areas, which is how the CCP seized power in China, the article compares North America and Western Europe to cities, and thinks of Asia, Africa, and Latin America as rural areas. Therefore, exporting revolution to Asia, Africa, and Latin America became an important political and ideological task for the CCP. A. Latin America. Professor Chung Ying Hong of the University of Delaware wrote the following in his article, quote, "Exporting Revolution to the World, an exploratory analysis of the influence of the Cultural Revolution in Asia, Africa, and Latin America." In Latin America, Maoist communists in the mid-1960s established organizations in Brazil, Peru, Bolivia, Colombia, Chile, Venezuela, and Ecuador. The main members were young people and students. With the support of China, in 1967, Maoists in Latin America established two guerrilla groups: the Popular Liberation Army of Colombia, which included a female company that mimicked the Red Detachment of Women and was called the Maria Cano Unit, and Bolivia's Nyancahuazu Guerrilla, or National Liberation Army of Bolivia. Some communists in Venezuela also launched armed violence actions in the same period. In addition, the left leader of the Peruvian Communist Party, Abimael Guzman, was trained in Beijing in the late 1960s. Apart from studying explosives and firearms, more importantly was his grasping of Mao Zedong thought, particularly ideas of, quote, "the spirit of transforming to matter," and that with the correct route, one can go from, quote, "not having personnel to having personnel, not having guns to having guns."
I want to stop for a second and concur with Roasted Opinions about there. It was less about exporting communism and more about resource access, and it still is to that day in Africa. Okay, China's in it for China. I think global communization, if that's a word, is a definite is a definite goal, but in the immediate sense, they're definitely in it for themselves.
Oh yeah, it definitely doesn't hurt that these people have natural resources for China to suck off of.
Right, exactly, and that's I was joking when I said that I thought that the what's called the coup may have been a targeted at a certain demographic of people because of the they're having a hard time getting Africa solid. Anyway, that's something that Alex Jones put in my head. So, and if it's like I'm not drinking and he's not drinking. He's telling me he's not drinking, but I don't know. But on that, all right. So, but I wanted to say hey to some people in the chat real quick. Goat Man, thank you for your blessing. We always appreciate you. Roasted Opinions, of course. Let's see. Tom of Loxley, hello. Richo 81, your boy Pat, man. How you doing? We need to do something, dude. Hit me up. Bloodletter 87, Gil. What's happening? Of course, Malin, my old boy. Darkstar 6909, thanks for the donation and thanks for coming out. I hate Camel. Love Camel. You see what I'm saying? You like that?
I do.
I think I've caught. Did I miss anybody, Becca?
I don't think
Remember,
so.
y'all, I got cataracts and they're starting to get pretty. I'm gonna have to have some surgery soon. So if letters kind of like run together, so I have to have. Yeah. Anywho,
I think you got everybody. Spittle Bugsy is here.
Spittle Bugsy, greetings. All right, and on that note, Spittle Bugsy, we're gonna crank this thing back up. I did want to concur with Roasted on that.
And other mantras of the Cultural Revolution. Guzman was the leader of the Peruvian Communist Party, also known as the Shining Path, which was identified by the U.S., Canadian, EU, and Peruvian governments as a terrorist organization. In 1972, when Mexico and the CCP established diplomatic relations, the first Chinese ambassador to Mexico was Zhang Shenghui. Zhang was a CCP intelligence agent sent to monitor Hu Zongnan, a general in the Republic of China Army, during the Chinese Civil War. The intent behind making him the ambassador was to collect intelligence, including about the United States, and interfere with the Mexican government. Just 1 week before Zhang Shenghui took office, Mexico announced the arrest of a group of guerrillas trained in China. This is further evidence of the CCP's attempts at exporting revolution. Cuba was the first country in Latin America to establish diplomatic ties with the CCP. In order to win over Cuba and at the same time compete with the Soviet Union for the leadership of the international communist movement, the CCP extended to Che Guevara a $60 million loan in November 1960 when he visited China. This was at a time when the Chinese people were dying of starvation from the Great Leap Forward campaign. Zhou Enlai also told Guevara that the loan could be waived through negotiations. When Fidel Castro began leaning toward the Soviet Union, after Sino-Soviet relations broke down, the CCP sent a large number of propaganda pamphlets to Cuban officials and civilians through the embassy in Havana in an attempt to instigate a coup against the Castro regime. B. Africa. Chung also described, in the article Exporting Revolution to the World, how the CCP influences the independence of African countries and what kind of path they take after independence. According to Western media reports, before the mid-1960s, some African revolutionary youth from Algeria, Angola, Mozambique, Guinea, Cameroon, and Congo received training in Harbin, Nanjing, and other Chinese cities. A member of the Zimbabwe African National Union, ZANU, described his one-year training in Shanghai. In addition to military training, it was mainly political studies, how to mobilize rural people, and launch guerrilla warfare with the goal of people's war. An Oman guerrilla described his training received in China in 1968. He was sent by the organization first to Pakistan, then took a Pakistan airline plane to Shanghai, then to Beijing. After visiting model schools and communes in China, he was sent to a training camp for military training and ideological education. The curriculum of Mao Zedong's works was the most important in the schedule. Trainees must memorize many quotations from Mao. The part about discipline and how to interact with the rural masses was very similar to the, quote, 3 major disciplines and 8 items of attention used by the People's Liberation Army. The African trainees also witnessed China during the Cultural Revolution. For example, during a visit to a school, when a teacher asked how to treat gangster elements, students replied repeatedly in unison, "Kill, kill, kill." At the end of the training, every Omani trainee received a book by Mao translated into Arabic. Assistance to Tanzania and Zambia was the largest of the CCP's external revolution projects in Africa in the 1960s.
Dark Star wonders, I wonder how many trained insurgents China has stashed away in the U.S. Well, we got a good picture of that this summer now, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
We got a good idea.
Looking into West Coast.
I'm telling you, just saying. So it's a good question, though. We'll keep rolling. I just wanted to chime in on that.
The CCP sent a large number of experts from the Shanghai Textile Industry Bureau to help build the Tanzanian Friendship Textile Factory. The person in charge injected a strong ideological tone into these aid projects. Upon arrival in Tanzania, he organized a rebel team, hung the 5-star red flag of the PRC on the construction site, erected a statue of Mao and Mao's quotations, played Cultural Revolution music, and sang Mao quotes. The construction site became a model of the Cultural Revolution overseas. He also organized a propaganda team to promote Mao Zedong thought and actively spread rebellious views among the Tanzanian workers. Tanzania was not happy about the CCP's attempts to export revolution. Afterward, Mao decided to build a Tanzania-Zambia railway that would also connect East Africa with Central and Southern Africa. The railway passed through mountains, valleys, turbulent rivers, and lush forests. Many areas along the route were deserted and inhabited only by wildlife. Some of the roadbeds, bridges, and tunnels were constructed on foundations of silt and sand, making the work extremely difficult. There were 320 bridges and 22 tunnels built. China sent 50,000 laborers, of whom 66 died, and spent nearly 10 billion yuan. It took 6 years to complete the work, from 1970 to 1976. However, due to poor and corrupt management in Tanzania and Zambia, the railway went bankrupt. The equivalent cost of the railway today would be hundreds of billions of Chinese yuan, or in the tens of billions of US dollars. 3. Exporting revolution to Eastern Europe. A. Albania. The CCP not only exported revolutions to Africa and Latin America, but also spent a great deal of effort to gain influence over Albania, another communist country. As early as when Nikita Khrushchev gave his secret speech marking the era of de-Stalinization, Albania was ideologically aligned with the CCP. Mao was greatly pleased, and he began the program of giving aid to Albania, regardless of the cost. Xinhua news agency reporter Wang Hongqi wrote, quote, "From 1954 to 1978, China provided financial aid to the Party of Labor of Albania 75 times. The sum in the agreement was more than 10 billion Chinese yuan. At the time, the population of Albania was only around 2 million, which meant each person received the equivalent of 4,000 Chinese yuan. On the other hand, the average annual income of a Chinese person at the time was no more than 200 yuan. Within this period, China was also experiencing the Great Leap Forward and the resulting famine, as well as the economic collapse caused by Mao's Cultural Revolution. During the Great Famine, China used its extremely scarce hard currency foreign reserves to import food supplies. In 1962, Rez Milli, the Albanian ambassador to China, demanded aid in food supplies. Under the command of Party Vice Chairman Liu, the Chinese ship carrying wheat purchased from Canada and due for China changed course and unloaded the wheat at an Albanian port. Meanwhile, Albania took the CCP's aid for granted and wasted it. The enormous amount of steel, machine equipment, and precision instruments sent from China were left exposed to the elements. Albanian officials were dismissive. Quote, "It's of little importance. If it breaks or disappears, China will simply give us more." China helped Albania construct a textile factory, but Albania did not have cotton, so China had to use its foreign reserves to buy cotton for Albania. On one occasion, the vice president of Albania, Adil Karkani, asked Di Biao, the Chinese ambassador in Albania at the time, to replace major equipment at a fertilizer factory and demanded that the equipment be from Italy. China then bought machines from Italy and installed them for Albania. Such so-called aid only instills greed and laziness in the recipient. In October,
It's almost like they're taking out of the Democrats' playbook there, right?
Right. And what's funny is, okay, so they're importing all this stuff, they're buying it for Albania. It reminds me of what's going on the West Coast.
And
how
their own fucking people are starving to death.
Yeah. Millions of dollars or yen
Yep.
just for that. And it reminds me of how, which I'm sure you'll get into later, how China's supplying our people here for their protest. And you think they're grateful for it? No. They leave all that shit behind after all these protests and the city cleans it up. And then magically the next night they're armed again with umbrellas and their gas mask and their commercial grade fireworks.
And their pallets of bricks.
Pallets of bricks.
and lighter fluid and shit. It's amazing. Hey, say hi to Tiberius Kirk and Sir Adamantine. I see y'all out there.
Yeah, hi, Tiberius.
Hey. All right, we're going to keep rolling. But I wanted to chime in on that. It seems like China's like throwing money at all this shit and their own people are starving to death. It's, it's crazy. It's incredible.
It is.
I mean, it's just, it seems to be a pattern.
October 1974, Albania demanded a loan of 5 billion yuan from China. At the time, it was late in the Cultural Revolution, and China's economy had collapsed almost completely, In the end, China still decided to lend 1 billion yuan. However, Albania was greatly unsatisfied and started an anti-Chinese movement in its country with slogans like, quote, "We shall never bow our heads in the face of economic pressure from a foreign country." It also declined to support China with petroleum and asphalt. B. Soviet repression in Eastern Europe. The socialist system in Eastern Europe was entirely a product of the Soviet Union. After World War II, according to the division of power laid down at the Yalta Conference, Eastern Europe was handed over to the Soviet Union.
I'm going to back it up just a little bit and show everybody that this is the Iron Curtain. Whoa, hello. There you go. But that little dotted wall right there, that was what was known as the Iron Curtain, which, it's like it was a mystery as to, what went on there, because only the news they wanted to get out got out, and then when the wall fell later, we found out stuff, a lot of stuff.
So it's like an information blackout along that.
Yeah, exactly.
Order.
I mean, because,
okay.
Well, there was a great example is they had a serial killer, and they pretended like he didn't exist. They didn't even put in their newspapers or anything, because there's no murder in paradise. That's the quote from Stalin. Right. Yeah, and that is a really good movie. I think there's one called Citizen X, which has got Gary Oldman in it. It's really good. And then the one with Tom, the guy that played Bane, that Tom.
No idea.
Hardy, Tom Hardy. And I can't remember the name of that movie, but both of those are really good about the apprehension of that serial killer. Crazy, like 38 kids murdered over a period of time.
Number 2. According to the division of power laid down at the Yalta Conference, Eastern Europe was handed over to the Soviet Union. In 1956, after Khrushchev's secret speech, Poland was the first country where protests broke out. After protests by factory workers, a crackdown, and apologies from the government, Poland elected Władysław Gomulka, who was hawkish on the Soviet Union and willing to stand up to Khrushchev. An attempted revolution in Hungary then took place in October 1956. A group of students gathered and toppled the bronze statue of Stalin in Budapest. Soon after, many joined the protest and clashed with police. Police opened fire and at least 100 protesters were killed. The Soviet Union initially wished to cooperate with the newly established opposition party and named János Kádár as the first secretary of the party central committee and Imre Nagy as the chairman of the Council of Ministers and Prime Minister. After Nagy came to power, he withdrew from the Warsaw Pact, a Soviet-led defense treaty, and further pushed for liberalization. The Soviet Union was unwilling to tolerate this, so they invaded, arrested Nagy, and executed him. The Hungarian incident was followed by Czechoslovakia's Prague Spring in 1968. After the secret report by Khrushchev, regulations in Czechoslovakia began to loosen up. For several subsequent years, a relatively independent civil society was being formed. One of the representative figures was Václav Havel, who later became the president of what became the Czech Republic in 1993. With this social backdrop, on January 5, 1968, the reformist Alexander Dubček took over as Prime Minister of the Communist Party of Czechoslovakia. He strengthened reforms and promoted the slogan of humane socialism. Soon afterward, Dubček began rehabilitating, on a large scale, individuals who had been wrongly persecuted during the Stalin period. Dissidents were released, control over the media was loosened, academic freedom was encouraged, citizens could travel abroad freely, surveillance over religions was reduced, limited intra-party democracy was allowed, and so on. The Soviet Union considered such reforms a betrayal of the principle of socialism and feared that other countries would follow. From March to August 1968, the leaders of the Soviet Union, including Leonid Brezhnev, held 5 conferences with Dubček.
I'm going to pause it right there. Thanks, Stone Monkey. $5. What? I can send super chats now? Awesome. Indeed, it is awesome. So
Hey, Stoned.
That's cool. Yeah, I've got a little slight delay, so when it pops up, it gives me a chance to pull the thing up so I can. I'm letting y'all see the behind the curtain. It allows me to pause the video. So we're gonna unpause it now. Look at this T-55. Those Russians and Hungarians and Czechoslovakians, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of this is coming back to me now. This is about the time that we picked up information in school from this era.
Yeah. They'll definitely. This is definitely all. This is big stuff when it happened.
Trying to pressure him into abandoning democratic reforms. Dubček rejected the appeals. As a result, in August 1968, more than 6,300 Soviet tanks invaded Czechoslovakia. The Prague Spring, which had begun 8 months prior, was crushed. Judging from the Hungary incident and the end of the Prague Spring, we can see that socialism in Eastern Europe was forced upon the people there and violently maintained by the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union let up slightly, socialism in Eastern Europe began falling away immediately. The classic example is the fall of the Berlin Wall. On October 6, 1989, multiple cities in eastern Germany were holding massive protests and marches, clashing with police. At the time, Mikhail Gorbachev was visiting Berlin. He told the General Secretary of the Socialist Unity Party of Germany, Erich Honecker, that reform was the only way forward. Immediately afterward, East Germany lifted travel restrictions to Hungary and Czechoslovakia. This allowed vast numbers of people to defect to Western Germany through Czechoslovakia, and the Berlin Wall could no longer stop the waves of fleeing citizens. On November 9, the East gave up on the partition. Tens of thousands of residents poured into West Berlin, and the wall was dismantled. The symbol of a communist iron curtain that had stood for decades disappeared into history.
Well, and I think it was Khrushchev that said that they built that wall as a test, that they would have stopped if there was enough pressure from the West on that. So
and they didn't receive any, did they?
No, they didn't. Dude, it was like a tinderbox, though. They didn't want another war to go off right in the middle of Europe when they just, were busy, just got finished cleaning up after the last one.
Right.
Right. It was a huge deal.
The year 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell, was full of turmoil. Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, and Eastern Germany all achieved liberty, freeing themselves of socialist rule. This was also the result of the Soviet Union giving up on its own policies of interference. In 1991, the Soviet Union fell, marking the end of the Cold War. 4. The end of the Cold War. The end of the Cold War was a great relief for many. They thought that socialism, communism, and similar tyrannies had finally come to an end. But this was simply another way for communism to win. The standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union diverted people's attention away from the Chinese Communist Party and gave it time to carry out more malicious and sneaky schemes. The Tiananmen Massacre on June 4, 1989, marked the rise of party leader Jiang Zemin. Aided by the party's suppression and propaganda machine that had already matured, Jiang continued to systematically destroy traditional culture and manufacture party culture. By destroying morals, Jiang cultivated a society of wolf cubs, youth who were anti-tradition and anti-morality, which made way for the large-scale persecution of Falun Gong, and eventually destruction of humankind. Although communists have fallen from power in the former communist countries, communism has never been tried for the crimes it committed on a global level. Russia, similarly, has never purged the Soviet influence or abolished the secret police apparatus. The former head of the KGB is now in charge of the country. Communist ideologies and their followers not only still exist, but are spreading their influence to the West and around the world. The anti-communist activists in the West, the older generations who have a deeper understanding of communism, are gradually dying out, while members of the newer generations lack a sufficient understanding of, and the will to understand, communism's evil, murderous, and deceptive nature.
Hence the reason for this show. You know, when the wall fell down, I think that the analysis that we just got was perfect. You know, we had let up on our attention. The Cold War, everybody's breathing a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, China's still doing their thing, right? And, and there's people in Russia, you know, that are like, you know, this is bullshit. You know, we want the old ways back, and you know, and so part of what China did was start those Confucius, I don't know what to call them, learning centers in universities, right? Started with like Harvard and shit, you know, and in Berkeley, and then, you know, worked their way, you know, to where I'm sure if I went to the University of Alabama, or if I went to the University of Arkansas or something, they're probably there too now.
They're everywhere.
Indeed.
Diversion is always used, isn't it?
Indeed.
Consequently, communists have been able to continue their radical or progressive movements to destroy the existing ideologies and social structures and even seize power through violence. Hey, Red Square is still red. As other former communist countries called for independence in succession, people in the Soviet Union also yearned for change. Politics fell into chaos, the economy collapsed, and Russia was isolated in foreign affairs. Then Russian President Boris Yeltsin declared that the Soviet Communist Party was illegal and restricted its activities. People were energetic in expressing their long-held contempt for the party.
And a big contributor to this was the Afghanistan war that they spent years. And you know, Afghanistan is the country. It's what they say. That's where
I have no idea.
Regimes go to die. You know, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's always what we want. We're always trying to overthrow regimes for our own purposes, is what I've always been told.
Yeah, but Afghanistan, you know, it's like when the French went there under Napoleon. It's just like it's a thing, you know. It's the Confucius centers are everywhere, tourists. We're gonna roll again.
And on December 26, 1991, the Supreme Soviet passed a law to dissolve the Soviet Union, marking the end of its 69-year rule. But how could deeply rooted communist ideologies yield so easily? Yeltsin set off a decommunization campaign upon establishing the Russian Federation. Statues of Lenin were pulled down, Soviet books were burned, former Soviet government employees were laid off, and many Soviet-related objects were smashed or burned. But all this still didn't get to the essence of communism. The denazification movement after World War II was much more thorough, from the public trials of Nazi war criminals to the cleansing of fascist ideology. The very word Nazi is now tied to a sense of shame. Even today, the hunt for former Nazis continues in order to bring them to justice. Unfortunately for Russia, where communist forces were still strong, the absence of a thorough purge of communism left room for them to make a comeback. In October 1993, only 2 years after the citizens of Moscow had taken to the streets to demand their independence and democracy, tens of thousands of Moscow citizens marched on the city square, shouting the names of Lenin and Stalin and waving the former Soviet flags. The rally in 1993 was of communists asking for the reinstatement of the Soviet system. The presence of troops and police only intensified the confrontation. At the critical moment, the security services and military officials chose to support Yeltsin, who then dispatched military tanks to quiet down the crisis. Yet communist forces still remained and established the Russian Communist Party, which became the largest political party in the country until it was replaced by the current ruling party, Vladimir Putin's United Russia. In recent years, in some surveys, such as those conducted by Moscow's RBK-TV from 2015 to 2016, many respondents, about 60%, have said that the Soviet Union should be reborn. In May 2017, many Russians commemorated the 100th anniversary of the Soviet Union's rise to power. The Soviet Communist Youth League, Komsomol, which was established during the Soviet Union, held an oath-swearing ceremony for youths joining them in Moscow's Red Square before Lenin's tomb. At the rally, the chairman of Russia's Communist Party, Gennady Zyuganov, claimed the 60,000 new recruits had joined the party recently and that the Communist Party continued to survive and expand.
Yeah, but they really like they're starting to like capitalism a lot now. There's been a couple of generations that, but there's still the old guard there that says, you know, they want to bring it back. It's a thing. But
is it romanticized? Is that why?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And we've got some stuff that we can show later on where it's interviewing people. As a matter of fact, this guy named Vladimir Jaffe, Jaffe, does interviews people. He was from the Soviet Union, and he does it on YouTube. So I'm going to try to see if we can maybe get him live and talk to us about that.
That would be cool.
Or if not, at least show this. He did a great interview with this Russian Jew that was in the Gulag, and I haven't watched all of it yet, but it's fascinating stuff, man. Gulags are. Solzhenitsyn's book is something that I've got to get and read, the Gulag Archipelago, because his story alone is something that you might want to read about. He fought for Russia during the war, was captured, and then after the war, he was sent to the Gulag because he was captured. And a good Russian would, and a good member of the party would not have been captured.
Yeah.
Right. So they were saying that he had been brainwashed by the Nazis to be a Nazi, and that was all bullshit. Right. So there's a song that the guy that does. Anyway, I'll talk about that later.
In Moscow alone, there are almost 80 monuments to Lenin, whose body, entombed in Red Square, continues to attract tourists and followers. Red Square is still red. The KGB has never been thoroughly exposed and condemned by the world. Communism is still present in Russia, and believers of communism still abound. B. The Red Calamity continues. There are currently 4 countries ruled by self-declared communist regimes: China, Vietnam, Cuba, and Laos. Although North Korea has abandoned Marxist-Leninist communism on the surface, in actuality, it is still a communist totalitarian state. Before the Cold War, there were 27 communist countries. Now, there are 13 countries where communist parties are allowed to participate in politics, while there are currently about 120 countries that have registered communist parties. But over the past century, communist influence in government has faded away in most countries. However, the majority of these countries still came under variants of socialism. Rather than calling themselves communist, the political parties took on names like the Democratic Socialist Party, the People's Socialist Party, and the like.
Like they're doing here. And the reason that there's not as many of them as there used to be is because it doesn't work.
Never has, never will.
BECCA, it doesn't work. Why do people keep wanting to do shit that doesn't work?
Because they think they can succeed at bringing it in. The whole idea of utopia is quite, I don't know, amusing for those that know human nature. But for the ones that don't, they embrace it and they want it and they want to live it.
Yeah, they want everyone to love each other and be happy and succeed and have everything, you know, that so they don't feel worse, feel bad because they're better off than other people. I don't understand that.
Yes, I don't either.
You know, it's
and I like how they buy the whole idea from rich politicians that do not practice the theory of I work for you. It's they think they are above us. Write a book, guys. Write a book.
Indeed.
And then their narratives change as they get richer and we get poorer, I guess. And people still embrace this crap. It makes me want to pick them all up. We'll say it's a nice way to say it.
Well, yeah. It's annoying and it actually is detrimental to our process. I think for the people to be as hard-headed as closed-minded now that they're starting to use violence to try to communicate, and and that we can't have that. We can't. Because
they're morally correct, and we're just factually correct, and morals always trump facts, right?
Right, because the feelings are in the primitive part of the brain. Feelings are the most primitive function of the brain cognitively, right?
Right.
But you base your decision on your feelings. You're basing your decisions on your primitive brain. Therefore, you're making primitive decisions. Just saying. Exactly.
Of the 33 independent countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, the majority have communist parties that are accepted as legitimate political players. In Venezuela, Chile, Uruguay, and elsewhere, the Communist Party and the ruling party often form coalition governments, while communist parties in other countries play the role of opposition. In the West, and in some countries in other regions, communism did not resort to violent methods as was done in the East. But through subversion, it has subtly infiltrated society and achieved its goals of destroying people's moral values, destroying the culture God has imparted to them, and spreading communist and socialist ideologies. The Spectre has, in fact, gained control over the entire world. Achieving the ultimate goal of destroying humankind is only a step away.
Well, that makes it ominous, doesn't it? That's the end of it.
Yeah.
And then next week, what we'll do is we'll go into the direct effect on the U.S. and the West in general, like Britain and things like that too. All right. So this is the point where we always show some old propaganda stuff that BECCA and I have dug up. And today we're gonna hear about the vote, about the way that I was taught about the vote. Okay, young people need to stress this shit to young people. Okay.
Agreed. Because like you, I was also taught this.
Exactly. Well, let's make it happen. Whoops. There we go.
I've just had my say in the government of our country, my own private say. And if you, or the policeman over there, or the President of the United States asks me how I voted, I can say that's none of your business. As an American, I have that right. Every one of these people has that right. You have it. It's something special. Americans have a heritage of the vote no other nation on earth can match. Because in the modern world, we were the first to build a working system of government on the foundation of the vote. Webster's dictionary says, vote, the right to exercise a wish, choice, or expression of will. Here in Berlin, one of these men is about to vote in the only effective way he can, with his feet. Thousands and tens of thousands have made the dash to freedom from behind the Iron Curtain, and a graphic phrase came into being. They were voting with their feet. Then in Berlin came the wall. As elsewhere, the communists had to do something. Too many people wanted out. And despite the wall, men and women would still risk prison or death.
Yeah, there's a bunch of Californians voting with their feet right now, right? And so everything is correct. That is E.G. Marshall, a great voice, and he did the Radio Mystery Theater for CBS for years and years. Fun shit.
It is well not to underestimate how deeply runs the need of human beings for freedom of choice. Freedom of choice is the essence of voting. The polling place in which only one answer is acceptable is no polling place. Of course, when you give each man a free choice, you run the risk of wide disagreement. Fine. Harry Emerson Fosdick said it well. Liberty is always dangerous, but it's the safest thing we have. The vote itself is nothing recent in man's history. The first ballots known were used in the popular courts of ancient Athens. The juries used balls like these to register their votes. White for innocence, black for guilt. From these came our word ballot, which means literally little ball. No, voting is nothing new, but not until the 18th century in the American colonies did the vote become the actual foundation of a governmental system. This was something new in the world, and it was not easily done. With us, the secret ballot became the rule. This way, the voter couldn't be intimidated before the voting or punished afterward. Power groups, of course, looked for ways to get around it. For example, a man might be ordered to write his name or put an identifying mark on his ballot, so his vote could be checked. So a law was passed. Any ballot so marked would not be counted. Or a voter might be told to take a friend with him to the poll, to help him with the paperwork, and again, to make sure of his vote. So another law was passed. No one is allowed in the polling place but election officials and individual voters. Private voting booths naturally followed, and so it went. Over the years, we made the system work, but there were a lot of kinks to be ironed out along the way. For example, what about citizens in uniform? Before the Civil War, most states wouldn't let soldiers vote at all. They were afraid of military control of elections in communities near large army installations. The few who could vote had to do it in person or not at all. There was no absentee balloting. During the Civil War, some Union states set up ways for men away from home to vote. Some arranged for voting in the field. Others allowed men to mail votes home for a friend or relative to take to the polls for them. All this, however, was strictly temporary. By the time World War I came, many states had set up absentee voting systems, and in 1917, with most troops still in the states, the military vote was substantial, if not truly impressive. But in 1918, with 2 million men overseas and no provision for voting outside the United States, the military vote was virtually non-existent. Clearly, these men had the right to vote, but there was just no provision for it. When World War II came,
they earned the right to vote.
100% they
did. They put their lives on the line for this country. So, and this is, all right, so yeah, we'll keep going.
The problem had to be tackled all over again. Congress passed the federal voting law to allow service people away from home in time of war to vote. Now, those overseas could vote for Senate, House, and presidential candidates. In 1944, some 2.5 million voted overseas. It was somewhat complicated to get the ballots through the mail and send them back to the states again. Still, if you really wanted to, there was a way. During the Korean War, it was made easier for a serviceman overseas to cast his vote, and he was encouraged to do so. But this was still a special combat zone provision, and like all the others before it, a temporary one. So, in 1955, it was a major step forward when the Federal Voting Assistance Act became law, providing the mechanism for absentee voting anytime, anywhere, war or peace, on a permanent basis. This law provided for getting election information to the serviceman and helping him to obtain an absentee ballot. It also recommended to every state that it adopt a simple and uniform voting procedure to make the whole process less complicated. The FPCA, Federal Postal Card Application, became the key to the program. And today, every state accepts it as a valid application for an absentee ballot from service personnel. Today, casting your vote from any spot on Earth is an easy matter. No matter how you look at it, from your viewpoint as a soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine, the steps you take are simple. Your voting officer will see to it that you get an application card together with the voting information you need for your voting district. You fill out the FPCA and drop it in the mail. No need for a stamp. It goes by free airmail right to your voting district back home.
And this was expanded to the populace, right? So
Yes.
we've had a mail-in system in place since what, the 50s? Since the World War II. That was before that. This is the 40s. We've had a way to do all this stuff with mail-in. Think about that and get pissed off about it.
They will send you an absentee ballot back, again by airmail. You have it with a minimum of delay. The rest is up to you.
Yeah, right.
And rightly so. Your vote, for whatever candidate, for whatever reasons, is your business and no one else's. Finally, your ballot goes back home by air and into the voting total, along with the votes of your neighbors. And wherever you are, you have the means of making sure that your vote is an informed vote, of following the issues, the candidates, the platforms, as the campaign gets underway. If you're ever tempted to wonder if your single vote means anything, just remember that every vote is counted and everyone counts. A single vote can swing an election. Don't underestimate it. This is something no amount of money can buy for you if you don't have it. It's just a piece of paper, but it represents your basic right as a citizen. More than 130 years ago, a man named William Corbett hit it right on the head when he said, "The great right of all, without which there is in fact no right, is the right of taking part in the making of the laws by which we are governed." Important aspects of your life in uniform are directly regulated by the Congress. Pay rates, allowances, benefits, term of service, and so on. But the Congress is also directly regulated by you as citizens. This is the means by which you can have your say. Wherever the needs of the nation demand it around the world, you are on duty. Dramatic duty sometimes, not so dramatic most times, but always important, necessary to the overall purpose. The same purpose it has always been, to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Who more than you, who in this moment of history are providing the defense of the nation, who more than you should use the free voice which you are helping to ensure? That free voice is the vote.
And that's it for the visuals. You want to process what we just looked at, Becca?
Yeah, so Roasted is telling me something in the chat. So my husband is active duty military. He only votes when he's home on leave because he is under the belief that absentee votes are not counted unless races are close. Roasted is correcting me on that and saying that all the votes are counted. So I'm wondering where my husband got his information because I too also heard that. So I'm wondering if it depends on the...
It sounds like fucking Democrat disinformation. I don't know, man.
I don't know.
It sounds like bullshit to me.
For 2 years, I fought with my husband about this because I was like, you're seriously going to give up your constitutional right and you're defending our great nation? You, of all people, should have the right to vote, and you're just giving it up. So he explained to me...
I didn't think it should be a path to citizenship, to be honest. Especially, really just combat, all right? People that see combat, you know, like from Guam or... You see what I'm saying? I mean, I guess they're not citizens, but they are. They're in a weird... But so Roasted is saying, nope, absentee ballots are ballots. They issue them for all elections. So, wow.
Well, I know they're issued for all of them. I'm just wondering if they're counted for all of them, unless it's a close race, and then that's when they count the absentee. So like I said, that's how it was explained to me by him, which I never bothered to look into because I'm not active duty military, so... And I go to the polls for every election. It's interesting. I'm gonna have to talk to the husband and see where he got that information because you're right. It's very likely it's a disinformation campaign with our military men and women.
Dude, I guarantee you the TRACOMs are behind that shit. Yeah, no shit. Yeah, exactly. Because we know that the military is big on a certain person running for president right now.
Yes.
And God forbid if their votes get counted. God,
see, and Zach in the chat says his CO had explained it to him the same way. And it was explained to my husband. So sounds like a misinformation campaign to me. Yeah, so the 19 years my husband has been in service, he's probably voted 5 times.
Wow.
Uh-huh. Because he doesn't think his vote counts unless it's an extremely close race.
Yeah, but they're also doing woke shit in the military now, aren't they?
And Trump has put a stop to a lot of it.
Yeah, but they... So, that kind of makes sense that given the recent past of it. But, you know, when we watch this stuff, it just drives home the importance of that one, even that one vote, you know, that you got, and the importance that you exercise your vote, because that's the one thing that the guarantee that you can get here is that your voice can be heard among, you know, one at a time. And I just don't understand why they're telling people that.
Well, they're heavy to one side in our military, I believe. I believe Roasted is correct. So yeah, it makes sense why they would start telling these guys, your vote won't count anyway unless it's an extremely close race.
Roasted was in the military, all right. So, you know, Roasted, if you can you hop into Discord real quick and set us straight on this shit? Because now I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And if you can't, it'll take us. It's like on 30-second delay. I've got the delay set as low as I can, so it's still 30 seconds.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll have to talk to the husband and try to convince him. I don't know. Well, stop thinking that way.
Yeah. So a week from tomorrow, man, is the big day. And
he says. Roasted is correct. Trust the roasted. The roasted knows.
The roast, he does, man. That's for sure. The dude does his homework, and listening to this dude rant is really a treat. because he rants and he articulates everything you think and feel, but accurately. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense to you. All right, so
Makes sense.
So, all right, what do you got coming up, Becca? It's that time to chill and thrill.
Okay, so fairly just BECCA typical days, Tuesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. Central. Last night's show was rescheduled to this Wednesday, 10 p.m. Central, and I will have Moonshock and Terry Diamantis on with me, and hopefully Richo as well. So, and then Saturday, I'm not going to do a stream because it's Halloween, and that is my holiday. I will be running the streets, protesting in costume. I'll just say it like that. So
interesting.
Halloween is definitely my holiday. The girls are like, "Oh, are you really going with us?" I'm going as Billy the Puppet from the Saw movies.
Cool.
And I'm small enough that I can use my niece's tricycle, which is going to be completely creepy for any of the kids that are on the street because I will be completely chasing people. So.
I would like
yeah,
to play
I already
a game.
have the recording and stuff ready to go, so I'm going to play that
Nice.
as I'm chasing people. Anyway.
No doubt. It sounds like fun. All right, so here's what I got coming up. Wednesday, I will be on, hold on. Before Wednesday, there's Tuesday, and Jack Gunsky doing the Quippers United, the couples night with me and Uzi are going to be with Johnny Bonsacco and his wife, what's her name?
Seth.
Kessa, and Moonshock and his wife, whose name I don't know. So we'll all meet each other and giggle at how shitty we can't draw with a fucking mouse. Wednesday I will be on Sparky's. The news so important, so fast that it's the Thursday news, but you get it on Wednesday, and that's the name of the show, the Thursday newscast on Wednesday, and that's Aircraft Sparky. So mark that down. That should be fun. I'll be hanging with he and Kieran and maybe Batman. I've hung with Batman quite a bit, the British Batman. And let's see, Friday night, of course, Cream Stream, accelerated deconstruction probably won't happen because Bama's playing a night game. You know what that means. R8's going to be watching that damn thing. And Sunday, I'll be talking with the next 6 minutes. So that's what I got lined up. And then next week, we got more of what we looked at today, plus another video about voting. But it's from the guy that made those machines, the old school machines with the drapes. That's the first time I voted. I had one of those. That was an interesting experience. And that's all I'll say about that. I don't got nothing more to say, Miss Becca. What about you?
I have nothing.
All right.
I think Moonshock's wife is Sunburst.
Okay. Well, that kind of fits, doesn't it? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
They should name the family Three Nipples. Anyway, so and I love Moonshock. He's cool. So let's go ahead and say goodbye and get out of here and go and start gathering information for this next week.
On it. Good night, everybody.
Night, y'all. Thanks,